All right, everyone. People were angry a couple of days ago because the New York Times ran an expose on, like, the average Nazi. Yes, he's a white supremacist, but he's polite in public, and he likes soccer. He drinks beer. He's kind of like a regular person, if he weren't, an evil, scummy Nazi, says the New York Times. A lot of people read into this. People on the left, they raked New York Times over the coals. They said, well, this is trying to normalize Nazis. You're trying to humanize this person, as though dehumanization is something that the left has traditionally involved itself within. That's one of their main problems, is that they've delved to the same kind of totally negative tactics that they often criticized in others maybe 50 years ago, which is why it's really not a left anymore. It's just neoliberals. Just a bunch of propagandist sheep that have been brainwashed by the establishment. But I see something far more sinister in this. That is, I think that the legacy media has noticed something. Their attacks on Nazis, which involves if you're anywhere on the right, if you're a libertarian, you're a leftist but you didn't vote for Hillary and were vocal about it, like you're a San Bernie bro or something, you're loosely a Nazi to many of these people. The social justice craptivists consider you to be a Nazi if you don't want to shove basically a plug up your butt and talk about how much you apologize for your privilege all day. They have a problem with you. They even have started to label people who are not white to be Nazis. They've even begun to do that. If they're too far right on some issue or another, situationally or in totality, they're a Nazi too. To the point at which someone who's like a tradcon, they would have been considered totally centrist in the 90s, they're a Nazi too. It's a moral panic. Anyone that doesn't understand it's a moral panic has either been brainwashed to think that there's no panic and it's a real problem, which, trust me, it's not, and it'll blow over in a few years, and most of these idiots will have forgotten about it. They're either brainwashed or they're just dumb. Honestly, they're just so dumb. They're just such partisans. There's something more sinister here. It's not an attempt to normalize the Nazi, it's an attempt to insinuate that yes, indeed, that person who ultimately says nothing racist, does nothing racist, and is simply a normal, middle-class, average white American is probably a Nazi. That's the insinuation. It's total propaganda. So I'll rake the New York Times over the coal too. On this, I'm going to agree with people on the far left, but for totally different reasons. They're saying the New York Times is trying to defend the Nazi. No. The New York Times is trying to convince you that the average person who has even no racialist beliefs whatsoever, someone who is, trust me, probably a garden variety liberal in most cases, is a virulent racist. That interpersonally, that individual tells nothing but racist jokes and has like a gollywog collection in their basement. They've got Klan robes in their closet, they're just not forthcoming about that fact. And it ties in as well with attacks on the new right, sort of the Soviet crowd. An ongoing concerted attempt has been made, and I'm not part of the new right either, before anyone gets the wrong idea, but I'm going to say this here. The new right crowd has morphed away from like the alt-right in terms of it's not really identitarian, it's a cultural nationalist movement of sorts. It's not ethno-nationalistic, certainly not white supremacy. It basically ties into the libertarian pro-free speech sort of alt-tech nexus that we see going on. It's an anti-left sort of movement in a generic sense, much more than it is a pro-right movement, because the new right, by older standards, probably wouldn't even be considered on the right. It'd be considered more of a libertarian movement. An ongoing effort has been made to insinuate that people in the new right are Nazis too. Oh, they're basically alt-right Nazis, the alt-right not necessarily being... It's not really white supremacy. Most of these people in an identitarian sense, honestly, are pan-nationalists. That is, they want to see, like, other cultures be nationalistic, too. They want it to spread. They want, like, black African nationalists, too. So it's not so much racism in the more traditional sense that most people think of, oh, well, you hate black people or you hate some other group. It's not quite the same. There is a differentiation, but the new right is totally removed from it. In fact, sparred with sort of the Spencerite alt-right, remember, with the free speech rally there. And then the identitarians showed up. And so Posobiec and Cernovich and some of these individuals sort of splintered off and held an anti-violence rally in sort of a semi-ironic sense. A rally to end political violence, I think they billed it. It's a totally different movement, but an ongoing effort has been made to glue them together. It's sort of like when attempts are made by, figures within the legacy media to glue someone like me to people who are actual identitarians on the basis that I've talked to identitarians. Of course, that's just guilt by association. It's totally wrong and it's propaganda. This is sort of part of that, though. This is the sort of behavior I would expect. See, their first goal was to render the Nazi or the identitarian or the far-rightist, whatever the hell they want to label it. They use various labels. As a one-dimensional caricature. Sloppy, fat, ugly, neck-bearded, socially awkward, probably MGTOW, can't get on with the women, has a small penis. All of these things have actually openly been said throughout the last year. But including by mainstream look, Hillary Clinton comes out and says, well, basically everyone opposing me, 50% of them are total racists. They're deplorable and irredeemable. A good 10-15% of the American population is beyond redemption. They are hideous, slovenly cavemen. That's basically what Hillary Clinton was saying. A presidential candidate was talking down to tens of millions of Americans. And nobody even noticed, in the legacy media, nobody even noticed how surreal this was. How strange it was. They were fixated on, hey, Trump doesn't like people from other countries sometimes when they come here and do bad things. He's an evil, despicable bigot. But Hillary Clinton saying, 15, 20 million people are deplorable, that's perfectly okay, even if she's saying that about people within the United States, American citizens. Oh, those darn working and middle-class white males, those darn Nazis, it's basically the same number she'd be talking about, by the way. I wonder if anyone noticed the overlap, the similarity between those two totals, namely white males, who weren't voting Clinton, of course. Those are the privilege checkers. But when I look at this, when I look at the New York Times Nazi next door sort of stuff, this is the second wave of their attempt. The one-dimensionality didn't work. That's the more classic way of doing the propaganda. That is that you've created a humorous, ironic, irredeemable caricature of some group that you don't want taken seriously. It's sort of like the ongoing mimetic assault on politically incorrect, on 4chan, with the 56% meme, where they have increasingly grotesque caricatures of Americans on there. It's an attempt by people who I think don't really like the MAGA front of American politics to sort of render those individuals into the humorous so that they can't be taken seriously. Of course, on 4chan, it's not as much of a problem because, most of the stuff that's posted there, I don't know if you can take it fully seriously. I think that would be an unwise decision. Maybe more politically incorrect than some boards, but, come on, a lot of it's satire. But now they've moved to stage 2. That really didn't work. You see, you've kneecapped the movement by making it humorous to people who are in the center, so they'll be like, ha ha ha, those darn Nazis. Or, they're not mostly Nazis, but you've labeled them that. First you apply the label, then you make the label strictly negative. Now you've got to bring them back out of one-dimensionality. Now you've got to flesh them out to the point at which you can expand that new negative image so that you can insinuate that people who are actually normal, and it's basically saying the fact that there's no evidence that this person is a Nazi because outwardly they show no Nazi tendencies means they're probably a Nazi. It really will facilitate allowing people who are like the craptivist side of the social justice warriors to proclaim that anybody around them happens to be a Nazi. That's really what it's about. It's a propaganda tactic. Oh, you're a Nazi. Well, no, I'm not. Ha. He says he's not a Nazi, therefore he's a Nazi, basically. It's exactly like the Red Scare, like the Satanic Panic. Oh, you're a Satanist, you worship the devil. Well, no, I'm actually a Christian. Ha, he denies it. Just like a Satanist to deny his own Satanism. Ye are a witch. No, I'm not a witch. Ha, ye have denied it, therefore ye are of the devil. It's the same thing. It's a literal witch hunt. It's a lynch mob. Funnily enough, considering I saw an article the other day. They were worried, the right wing might bring back lynching or something. You're intellectually already, you are the lynch mob. You are also the intellectual book burners. You're constantly trying to censor everything online, in print, whatever. Lean on Amazon, lean on YouTube, lean on... you don't want any information published that you happen to have a personal offense to. Despite the fact that 99% of that is totally normal material. You're just seeing it as part of a bigger problem because you've been brainwashed into a moral panic. Some of these people, though, I'll say this in closing. We can't be too hard on some people on the left. Most of them have simply been fooled by, corporate masters who are using this to make money, basically. Use it to exercise control over the tech firms as well, I think, to an increasing extent. The ad firms, that is. Most of these people have just been fooled. That is, they're not intelligent enough in some cases, or they're just sort of zonked out and they didn't realize they were being lied to. So they actually do believe the moral panic. It's not like they're being malevolent pretending. They actually believe there's like Reds under the bed, Russia's everywhere, Nazis everywhere. It's weird because it's like watching history 40 years ago, like the mentality that would have been present then. Like back in the 70s or 80s, oh, communists are everywhere, they're listening. Or, World War II, when you drive alone, you drive with Hitler. Remember, the Japanese don't speak about anything classified. The Japanese might overhear you. You're out in the middle of the fucking woods. Somehow a Japanese spy is probably watching you. So loose lips sink ships, boys. Make sure to keep it quiet. Oh, by the way, that girl you're dating might be a communist spy too. She wore a little bit too much makeup on your first date. She's obviously not a pure, virginal American girl. She must be a degenerated, atheistic commie. It's the same thing. It's total propaganda, and so many people just don't notice it. Or, you can tell this is really successful because most of the people that had a problem with the article saw exactly that same projection. Oh, you're trying to normalize the Nazi. No. There's an attempt to render normalcy, but you're getting it in reverse. The idea is to insinuate that a normal person can be you don't actually have to have swastika tattoos and be shitposting Pepe memes and consider yourself alt-right to be one of those horrible, despicable white supremacists that want to kill millions of people. You don't have to be like that. You can be a totally normal, sweater-wearing, average suburbanite, because, of course, that's their real enemy. Their real enemy is that average middle-class suburbanite. They see that as the threat. They don't see... You think that anybody, any of the corporate masters or radio personalities or pundits or politicians or military generals, do you think that any of them feel even the least bit threatened by someone who is so dumb that they walk around with a swastika tattooed on their forehead? They don't worry about you at all. It's like some of these people that are like, they're openly, virulently racist. Like, to the point where, like, that's basically all they talk about. There are some people that are like that. They think, well, the government's gonna crack down on me. They'll chase me into a bunker and try to kill me, Ruby Ridge stuff. No, they're not. They don't give a fuck about you. They don't feel threatened by you. Your political ideology is never going to take root. You're so far out there, like actual, identitarians laugh at you for the most part. You consider them to be like sellouts or something. You're really the one you've fried your brain out. You've got problems. And the problem is that's sort of the actual Nazi that exists. What the New York Times is trying to do, though, is to convince people, oh, well, you don't actually have to be visibly, racist or anything. You could be just a closeted racist and still be a total Nazi. There are millions of them. They're called Trump voters. That's basically what they're intoning. Look, tens of millions of people voted for Trump. Most of them were white. All of them are Nazis. There's like 20 million Nazis in the country. That's the next thing they'll be saying. Oh, it's time to be honest. All these people with MAGA hats are white supremacists. It's probably what they'll say next. Trying to boil the frog a little bit. I don't think they'll be successful because, the easiest way to fight propaganda is to expose and explain it. Once it's been exposed and explained and enough people are inoculated against it, it no longer works. At some point, countermeasures develop and it sort of negates it. Yeah, it's like... It would be like making an article and, putting in the New York Times, of course, saying, oh, well, just because a person isn't dressed in all black and waving a communist flag doesn't mean they're a total degenerated communist who wants to bring mob rule to America. No, I hung out with this Antifa member and we were like playing video games and, smoked a little pot and then we went to the mall and got a Starbucks. They're just like you and me. Oh, you mean that all these totally normal people, if they say one thing that sounds kind of a little bit to the left, they could be a commie? That's what they used to say back in the 50s. Don't you fucking understand that? That's about all. Peace out.